Karl Rove, welcome back. This is a good move, isn't it?
Terrific move. It shows that the president understands what's happening out there and that his credibility and his administration are losing ground with the American people, and smart people, apparently, including you, had an impact on him, and good for you. Tom Homan is terrific. He's a tough guy, but he also knows that you get more with honey than vinegar, and I'm very confident he's going to be able to calm the waters and get local and state governments to be cooperating with ICE.
Listen, I remember in your administration, two fantastic people. I think Donald Rumsfeld and Colin Powell did not get along. It's okay. Sometimes it makes you better. But Kristi Noem and Tom Homan not speaking, that's not tolerable, especially in something that matters so much like immigration, right?
Yeah. And look, you'll notice the big difference between the two. We had an incident. Somebody was shot. Kristi Noem immediately went out. Secretary Noem went out and immediately opined about it. And Homan, who's a pro, said, let's find out all the facts. And I thought that was a very important moment where the president probably understood his interest and the interest of the country are better served by a calm, steady presence in the form of Tom Homan.
Here's what I worry about, Karl. I worry about Minneapolis saying with this organized protest, I worry about the funding, I worry about it's coming from overseas, and I worry that people are getting the wrong lesson from this, that they're going to go, the way to do it is to attack ICE, to infiltrate, stop them wherever they do. So this will be the template for New York City or wherever they decide to go next, that they might learn the wrong thing from this. I guess pressure on Tom Homan to execute in a more pragmatic way, perhaps. But do you worry about that?
Well, I do. In fact, let's look at it from an antiseptic point of view, just political observers. This would be a big mistake for the Democratic Party. Remember how badly they suffered from defund the police? They've got people today trying to wash that stain off. And if it is abolish ICE, the American people, particularly if Tom Homan steps in and calms the waters and says, we're coming after the bad guys. You've got them in your jails and your prisons. Give them to us and we'll get them out of the country. The American people are going to stand with Homan and against the, abolish ICE people. But you got to calm the waters and you got to change the tone and you've got to do it in a different way. And that means a change in the leadership of the operation.
So Howard Enton, who's hired as the pollster at CNN, had some interesting stats. New York Times, Marquette, CBS, and ABC agree on one thing. Let's listen. Cut 14.
Real uniformity here. That's what I really think you see. You see real uniformity. Deported all immigrants who are here illegally. 55% of the New York Times. Marquette, 64%. CBS News, 57%. ABC News with a slightly different question, 56%. So what you're seeing essentially here is a very clear indication that a majority of Americans, in fact, when they're asked this blunt question, which I believe gets at the underlying feelings, do in fact want to deport all immigrants who are here illegally. There's no arguing with these different numbers because they're all essentially the same across 4 different pollsters.
So if you walked into the president with that, what would you tell him to do? Because right now in immigration, he's between 45 and 50 prior to this shooting. So you know that the American people are there with him. I guess it's more methods.
Yeah, and priorities. I mean, if you look at the whole a collection of polls on this, the American people are thinking that the administration has gone too far. And there really is, if you poke at it, yes, if you're blunt and say in or out, they say out. But if you say, what about people who've been here who've, got family and established roots and blah, 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 there's a slightly different feeling. But look, you can't move from where we are until you have different leadership in charge that sets a different tone, because the issue of immigration, the president's handling of it went from being his biggest positive today a net negative. And that's the problem. The execution matters a lot. And I have greater confidence in Tom Homan than the crowd that's been doing it for the last 4 or 5 months.
So, remember last time it was a revolving door, in, out, chief of staff, move on, the OMB director, come be chief of staff, and Mick Mulvaney and everything like that. This has been the opposite. Outside Michael Waltz, who went over to the UN doing a great job, really no movement. At this point, I don't know what went on in that meeting for 2 hours. Would you consider removing the DHS secretary?
Well, that's a tough call to make. I mean, there got to be bigger issues than this one incident. But the fact that it was a 2-hour long meeting and she was accompanied by Corin Lewandowski, her special government employee who's serving as her de facto chief of staff, suggests that the White House is unhappy. Let me correct you on one thing. You're absolutely right that there has been great stability at the top of this. But if you, in terms of senatorial confirmed members, that's the cabinet, and the top White House staff, like the chief of staff and so forth. But what was interesting is we've seen the reports on movement inside the White House, that this is among the largest percentage of people who have voluntarily left within the first year of any modern recent president. So a lot of stability at the top. That's important. The fact that there has been so much movement below the top suggests that there's still, and I take it as necessarily a good sign that the chief of staff and the senior leadership of the White House is saying, let's get the best people in here, and maybe this person isn't working out. Let's move them on to another task inside the government.
Karl Rove, now with this whole DHS funding, Democrats have a bounce in their step, and they say we will not fund the Department of Homeland Security, and we will not fund this government and give you your 60 votes you need. Could we be looking at another shutdown? You can read the political winds. I want you to hear what John Fetterman said, who also has a problem with the way ICE is acting. Here is cut 33.
I was one of the Democrats that led the pushback about the government shutdown last year. And for about 45 days, they kept things shut down. If the Democrats vote to shut it down, now our entire military won't be paid again. I can't ever support that. Absolutely hope we can engage in a debate and make some of the kinds of common sense reforms on ICE and make it more safe, more humane, and more effective, and just focus exclusively on the criminals. I hope that's possible. But for me, I remain to be the one Democrat, at least, that refuses to shut our government down. And now, if this happens, our military won't be paid because a significant part of our government would shut down again.
So he's obviously the voice of reason, but I get the sense that there's not many other Democratic voices of reason. What do you think, Karl?
If they shut the government down, it's going to be a big problem for them. I mean, nobody wins in a shutdown, particularly when the shutdown is provoked clearly by one side saying we're digging in our heels and we're shutting it all down. That is not going to be good for the Democrats, not in this election year. I think Fetterman has got it absolutely right. He hopes there'll be a discussion about setting priorities and coming to an agreement about some of the practices. And look, I think that's very likely to happen because again, Tom Homan is he's a tough guy. You know him. He's a strong actor, and he knows that to get things done, you have to bring people together, and you have to get 80% of what you want and give 20% to the other side and move forward together. And I have every confidence that if he's now in charge,
right.
And look, he's a trustworthy guy. You know it. The people on the Democrats who've dealt with him, I've talked to members of Congress who are Democrats who said, Homan's word is good. So let him first do it in Minneapolis, and then if need be, bring him back to Washington to discuss this with people. But the Democrats will make a huge mistake if they shut down the government.
I hope so. And that I worry about? They looked at the big picture. The only thing slowing down this economy in retrospect in the fall was that shutdown. And it really caused us not to, number one, we were blind. We didn't get any numbers. And then we saw how people suffered, how many people were out of work, how much you don't spend leading up to the holidays, let alone what we saw with air traffic controllers and the ripple effects of it. Do you think on some level when those doors are closed and they're in that sealed room, they say, guys, the only thing to slow down the Trump economy right now would be a shutdown, and we might have the American public behind us? It would be diabolical, but it would be politically advantageous to hurt the economy because the president wants to ride that to midterm excellence.
Yeah. Well, I'd say two things. One is it's not going to help them politically. Look, the Democrats have an edge in the generic ballot today. In the Nate Silver aggregate, it's about 3.3%. That doesn't mean that they take the Congress. They need to have about a 5-point edge. If you look at some of these polls, the Republicans are better trusted on the economy and immigration, congressional Republicans, than congressional Democrats. And that is only going to get worse for the Democrats if they shut down the government by saying, we have an inarticulated list of demands that we're not willing to discuss with anybody. We just want to shut down the government. So, no, I think it's dumb on the part of the Democrats that they do it. If they're smart, what they will do is say, okay, Tom, here's some things we would like to see if we can come to an agreement and then vote it out and say, you know what, there'll be a big difference between how Democrats and Republicans govern. And when we get in charge, here's what we're going to do differently. That's a lot smarter than shutting it down.
So I want to talk about two leading Democrats for president, Governor Josh Shapiro and Governor Gavin Newsom. I was struck by, Josh Shapiro doing the interviews for his book with a lot of successful candidates will do to see, test the waters. At which time, of all places, The Atlantic, Tim Alberta talked about how he was surprised how unpopular Governor Shapiro is with people in his own party. That he's all about Josh and he'll stab anybody in the back in order to get 1 point in his approval rating. This is a guy with a 60% approval rating in Pennsylvania. And then you have him coming out against Kamala Harris, which I could thoroughly understand when he was asked during the vetting process, were you ever an agent for Israel? And they were worried that his wife, they wouldn't have enough money to have his wife dress up and look good and make the ticket look attractive. I understand that. Did you know about this reputation that he has? And you don't usually get hit, negative pieces on a would-be nominee, leading candidate for nominee in The Atlantic against a Democrat.
Well, what I take of it is that there are people out there who are scared to death of Josh Shapiro's potential, and they want to damage him earlier rather than later. And also, we know that he's got, sharp elbows. I mean, he stepped in, and rather than saying to the Democratic state chairman, you did a great job, our team is great, he kicked him out and replaced him with his own guy. I mean, he's a guy who is not afraid to, rough things up, and as a result has probably made some enemies in the state. Remember, this is a machine state. You have Allegheny County and you have the Philadelphia area, and they have Democrat organizations there that are strong and powerful. The governors come and go, but they like to hold on to the power that they have in their respective regions. And here's Shapiro, who's enormously popular and doesn't give a flip.
Okay, interesting. You kind of take his side, and I know you have so many contacts on both sides of the aisle. One of the quotes is, there are a lot of people, the governor counts as allies, people who raise money for him, the writer writes, support his reelection campaign, say all the right things publicly, who have serious beefs with him privately. So you said no big deal about this.
Well, it's not a no. We'll see how it plays out. Look. You and I have had this conversation before. We're looking at 2028, which is about 3 geological ages away. We got to go through the Jurassic, the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic. I mean, there's a lot of time. And what was interesting to me is everybody's now starting to take shots at each other. I mean, Newsom's taking shots. Shapiro's getting shot at. I mean, it's already begun in earnest, which says there are going to be a lot of people, and we'll see how they handle themselves over the course of the next 3 years. But how they handle themselves is going to help determine where they are when the voting actually begins.
David Axelrod on your buddy Gavin, David Axelrod on Gavin Newsom. Haven't we seen enough self-puffery in our leaders? Why can't people just be as courageous as me, is his attitude. He does not buy this Newsom act. I don't know what he's told you that you feel comfortable saying, but that's interesting, isn't it?
Well, it says it all, doesn't it? I mean, look, I'm not a fan of Newsom. He's got great hair, don't get me wrong, but I don't find him, and I get it that he's out there on the cutting edge of Democratic social media things. But look, at the end of the day, people are going to look and say, governor of what state again? California. And this is the same problem that Pritzker has. How many people say, God, one of the states that I think is really running its act well, doing everything good, is California. And or you know what? It's between I'm going to move to California or Illinois, Chicago or Los Angeles. Which one is it? I mean, Ronald Reagan got elected president in part because California still was the golden state, well run, lots of opportunity, a wonderful place to be. That people are, for the first time since 1850, in the next census, California will lose seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. The first time since they entered the Union in 1850. What does that say about that state?
I know.
People are fleeing from it. And this guy says, elect me president because I'll do to America, by God, what I've done to California.
Exactly. We've seen energy, homelessness, the budget deficit that he has, people moving out, and the $14 billion train to nowhere.
Utility bills, electric cars, no pickup trucks. I mean, there's so much to say about that guy, but he does have, let's admit it, good hair.
He looks the part. But
no, he doesn't. He doesn't look the part. He has good hair. He's a good-looking California politician.
Correcting the record.
Not necessarily a good-looking American politician.
Karl Rove, thanks so much. Always insightful and great to see you on Zoom.